Now that we've talked about the structure of a good talk abstract, I want to now show you 4 sample abstracts from some of my own talks that have been selected many times for different international conferences. A little background first though. My main audience are software developers, so a few of these talks are quite technical and cater to a software development audience. The last 2 talks I'm going to go through are more soft skills and people focused. On the following screens I'm going to be putting quite a lot of text on the screen, but don't worry about trying to read it all in one go. I'm going to go through each part and highlight the parts that I'm talking about and then read them out, so don't worry about trying to read everything for yourself. So let's get started with the first one. This first talk is a security talk aimed at the Microsoft.NET developer community and is called .NET Core Data Security, Hope is Not a Strategy. The title is in 2 parts. There's a main title, .NET Core Data Security, which tells the user this talk is aimed at .NET Core developers, and that this talk is about data security. The subtitle is Hope is Not a Strategy. This hints to the reader that this is a security talk that talks about how important it is not to ignore security. When I first pitched this talk to conferences, I didn't have the Hope is Not a Strategy subtitle. It still got accepted, but when I added that subtitle, it started to get selected a lot more, as it draws the reader into the abstract, but it isn't too clickbaity. The next line is, not encrypting your data is a risky move. Just relying on the hope that you won't get hacked and compromised is not a strategy. This first line of the abstract helps reinforce the title of the talk. For a software developer, it reinforces the point that not encrypting data is a fool's errand. Data breaches are an unfortunate reality for technical systems, and this line is there to make that explicitly clear. Next, we state that as a software developer, you have a duty to your employer to secure and protect their data. In this talk, you'll learn how to use the .NET framework to protect your data to satisfy confidentiality, integrity, non-repudiation, and authentication. My intention here is to tell the user that data security is their responsibility. It's down to them. Then I immediately follow up with what the talk is actually about. In that I'm going to talk about how to use the .NET framework programming system to help the listener to protect their company's data. I talk about confidentiality, integrity, non-repudiation, and authentication, which are well regarded as the 4 pillars of cryptography and data protection. If the reader is familiar with those terms, they'll be drawn into the pitch. If they are not familiar with those terms, then they will hopefully have their interest piqued to find out more. By this point, I've hopefully hooked the reader to make them interested in the talk. I admit that this talk caters to a very specific security-conscious niche, who use a particular programming environment, but that's fine. I'm happy to target to that group specifically, and with the events that I submit this to, that's perfectly acceptable. In the last section, I go into a bit more detail about what the viewer can expect. I deal with specifics here and I talk about the programming libraries concepts that I'm going to address. So let's read this out. So this talk covers random number generation, hashing, authenticated hashing, and password-based key derivation functions. The talk also covers both symmetric and asymmetric encryption using DES, triple DES, AES, CBC and GCM, and RSA. You then learn how to combine these together to produce hybrid encryption schemes, which includes AES, RSA, HMAX, and digital signatures. Now, I fully admit this actually gets quite technical and there's a lot of acronyms in there, but the audience that I'm catering this to will be familiar with quite a few of those acronyms already. So what I'm doing is I'm explicitly stating that if you come to this talk, I'm going to teach you how to use each of these different things and how to combine them together. So this tells the reader or the person who wants to come to the talk explicitly what to expect with no ambiguity. This next talk is another technical talk aimed at software developers who are familiar with the Microsoft Azure Cloud Platform. The talk is called Protecting Encryption Keys with Azure Key Vault. In this example, the title is much more specific without any kind of clickbaity hook. The talk is literally about protecting encryption keys using the Microsoft Azure Key Vault service. To anyone familiar with the Azure platform, this title is really all you need. With that being said though, I follow up with, in a world where we're putting our company's data into the cloud, the protection of that data against a data breach has never been more important. This line reinforces that protecting data against breaches is very important. A data breach is probably any developer's or company's greatest fear. This talk will help remedy that. This is the problem we are going to solve. Now that we've hooked the reader in, let's get into some specifics. Here I state, In this talk, I'll show you how to set up and use Microsoft's Azure Key Vault to protect your encryption keys and secrets like passwords and connection strings. Azure Key Vault uses the power of hardware security modules, IHSMs, to protect your secrets and make sure that your solutions are as secure as they can be when working in regulated industries like healthcare, financial, and insurance. Here I'm stating what we'll cover: setting up the Key Vault to protect your keys and secrets. I also state that the Key Vault uses powerful hardware to do its thing, and that it is needed by regulated industries like healthcare, financial services, and insurance. I've given the reader a glimpse of what we are covering and reaffirming that if you work in a regulated environment, this subject is going to help you out a lot. Next, I state, as well as showing you how to set up and configure the Key Vault, I'll show you how to code against it using various different patterns for security in a cloud-based multi-tenant environment. My main purpose here is to tell the reader that I'm not just talking about the beginner material or reading off the documentation. I'm covering specific usage patterns for Azure Key Vault. This talk goes beyond the basics. You can read about the basics in the manual on the internet. Next, I follow up with, I will cover topics like setting up Azure Key Vault, authorize your application to access the Key Vault using Azure AD, accessing the vault from your applications, using the vault to wrap local encryption keys for performance, and encrypting connection strings as Key Vault secrets to get flexible database routing in the cloud. Once this talk is finished, you'll walk away with everything you need to start using Azure Key Vault straight away. So here I'm getting a little bit more specific, building on the information that I previously provided. If there was ever any elements of doubt, I'm telling the reader what they will learn more specifically now. I then state at the end for the end hook that they will walk away with everything they need to start using Azure Key Vault. It's a big claim, but my post-talk feedback and ratings prove that the listener of the talk has been satisfied. This next talk is not a technical talk, but it's more of a soft skills talk. It's called Hacking Humans, Social Engineering Techniques and How to Protect Against Them. The title starts off with the term hacking humans. I spent ages thinking about the main title and settled on this as it's both interesting and relevant to the talk. The subject goes into more depth that this is about social engineering techniques and how to mitigate them. If the reader was to read no further, they would know what the gist of the talk was about. Next, I start to set the scene of the talk with the problem that I'm going to address. I state, social engineering is one of the biggest threats to our organisations. Attackers use manipulation techniques to coerce people into revealing secrets about our companies to allow attackers to gain access to critical systems. I explain that a big problem for companies is social engineering and manipulation of staff to extract information. Then I state, in this talk we'll look at some techniques used in social engineering and look at how to guard yourself against them. Here I'm stating my intent on what the viewer of the talk will hear. I'm going to talk about the techniques that social engineers use to manipulate people. Then I'm going to discuss how to guard yourself against these techniques. Then finally I go into a little more detail about some of the techniques I'm going to discuss by stating, we'll cover subjects like pretexting, elicitation and body language as techniques for manipulating people. This just gives a little bit more depth on what we are covering if someone is on the fence about whether to attend the talk. Out of all of my talks, this has the shortest abstract, but it has also been very successful as I've delivered this talk all over the world from London, Norway, Belgium, the USA, Poland and Australia. That last talk had a very short abstract. This next talk, Fighting Back Against a Distracted World, Increasing Your Focus and Self-Motivation, has a much longer abstract, but it has also been a very popular talk, so let's break it down. Here we have a two-part title. The talk is called Fighting Back Against a Distracted World. It's quite an attention-grabbing title. We live in a world of distraction. This talk will help you fight back. To hammer the point home, the subtitle is Increasing Your Focus and Self-Motivation. I'm going to help you get more focused and motivated. Next, I set the scene of the talk by saying, we live in an age of technical wonder with the internet, high-end games and streaming services all vying for our attention. We have never had so many significant innovations available at our fingertips, accessible 24/7. There is a big problem though. With all these systems, you are being increasingly distracted, making it hard to focus on issues for an extended period. If left unchecked, this can affect our work, careers and self-confidence. We need to be able to break this cycle from throwing us into a spiral of distraction while still being able to enjoy all of these innovations. So here I'm expanding on the title by stating the problem. In our modern technical world, there are many distractions that are stopping us from being productive. Next, I start to tell a personal story. When I first went self-employed, I thought I had the ultimate freedom to do what I wanted, when I wanted. To a degree, I did. But I didn't have anyone looking over me, holding me to account. I started to become distracted. After a while, I decided things had to change. I started on a quest to become more productive, focused, and increase my motivation, while still enjoying the occasional Netflix binge. In this talk, I want to share my story of personal distraction, low motivation, and increased project anxiety. I will share how I broke this cycle and got my creative and productive mojo back. My intention here is to let the reader know that I'm going to be talking from personal experience. I'm going to talk about my own struggles and how I overcame them. People like personal stories and stories of personal growth. Now I get more specific with what I'm going to cover. This talk is aimed at anyone that strives to be more productive but struggles with distractions daily. In the talk, I will cover subjects such as distraction and procrastination, finding meaning in your work, increasing self-motivation, understanding your locus of control, productivity and time management, and controlling social media addiction. Now the reader knows this is a personal growth story and exactly what I'll be covering. They have all the information to decide if this talk is for them or not. Then finally I state, I consider myself now to be very productive, but it was a battle getting there. Let me share my story in the hope that I can also help you be productive and confident. In this final statement, I am reaffirming that this is a story of personal growth. I'm going to share my story so that I can help you be more productive and confident. This is one of my highest rated talks. Feedback from attendees has been that they loved the personal stories and how I overcame a problem. They left feeling motivated and inspired to put into practice what I discussed in the talk. Overall, this is a much longer abstract, but it was very effective. Let's now take a look at a subject that all speakers fear: rejection.